Other question to the Holy Father. Good evening, Your Holiness. Again, many thanks. My name is Lorenzo, and I work with children and youth in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of Lisbon. You have spoken many times about how important closeness and friendship with the poor and migrants are. I would like to ask you what we, Jesuits, can do personally and in our communities so that our way of life and our witness will be more and more a prophetic sign, so that we have a greater impact in the lives of the poorest. Thank you. The Pope's answer. Work with the poor, which is implicit in the Ignatian formula, has followed various paths, various tracks in the society. There have also been some mistakes, but it has been a very intense search, especially over the last century. I remember that in Argentina, when I was a student, one of the fathers went to live in a villa miseria, and they looked at him a little sideways, as they did with Father Llanos in Madrid. He was considered a madman. Now that is no longer the case. Today we see that spirituality itself is leading us in that direction, toward an engagement with those on the margins, not only on the margin of religion, but also on the margin of life. Then, in the time of Father Janssens, there came the Centers for Research and Social Action, which at that time opened a beautiful path of reflection and finally came direct insertion, the choice to live with poor people. So I mentioned that priest, one of those who had the courage to become inserted. Today, insertion among the poor helps ourselves, evangelizes us. Saint Ignatius calls us to make a vow not to weaken the rules concerning poverty in the society, but rather to make them stricter. In this, there is an insight, a spirit of poverty that I think we must all have. In short, what is there in Ignatian spirituality? Yes, there is the option for the poor and to accompany the poor. But is it the only way in which social justice is achieved? It is not the only way. There are 1,000 ways to approach social problems. Insertion probably has a wonderful authenticity because it means sharing, and it allows us to know and follow the wisdom of the people. Let me tell you something. I liked to go to the Villa Miseria when I was Archbishop. One day I visited there. John Paul II was very seriously ill. I took the bus to go to one of the villas, and when I arrived, they told me that the Pope had died. I celebrated Mass with the people, and when we stopped for a talk, an old lady asked me, "Can you tell me how they elect a Pope?" I explained. "And you, can they make you Pope?" I said, "They can't make anyone Pope." She replied, "I'll give you a piece of advice. If they make you Pope, buy yourself a little dog." "Why?" I asked her. "Feed the little dog first," she replied. The old woman was poor, from a villa miseria, but she knew a lot about the facts of the Church. This is an interesting thing. The poor have a special wisdom, the wisdom of work and also the wisdom of taking on work and its condition with dignity. When the poor become enraged because they can't stand their situation, and that is understandable, then resentment and hatred can set in. That too is our job. In accompanying them, we must prevent the poor from becoming overwhelmed. We must work with the perspective of helping them walk to make progress and to recognize their dignity. There are serious problems in poor neighborhoods which are no more serious than those that sometimes exists in other residential areas, except that these remain hidden. There are serious problems, but there is also a lot of wisdom in people who live by their work, who have had to emigrate, who suffer, and you can see it in how they endure illness, how they endure death. Ministering to the people is an enrichment, and so those of you who are called to do it, put your hearts into it, because it is a good for the whole society.